Hello everyone, welcome to the family. What are we going to talk about today? You have to understand something. We are planning at the family a big switch to English. We are taking all our content from French to English because we want to build a pan-European infrastructure. And that's really something we are working hard on it. It's hard, it's tough, but we think that the big opportunity for us as startup is not France, London, Berlin, or whatever. It's to think European. And to start to think European, we need to start to be proud to be in Europe. And what I want to try today is to tell you what you can take as an advantage of being in Europe. So, just a few things to be very, very clear. The first thing is that this debate about where is this next Silicon Valley is a bullshit debate. There will not be any other Silicon Valley. I'm sorry for you. We will always be losers behind the leaders. That's how it works in history. That's how things are always being. And if we become leader in something, it will not be a Silicon Valley-like. Because when you are late to a party, the only thing you can do is to do a nice after. It's not to try to leave the party when everybody left. So we will not leave the party of what we miss. Europe missed the first generation of internet companies. It's fine. It's done. It's not like only our government and policymakers have time to think about how to create the next Silicon Valley. If you're an entrepreneur and you are working hard, you don't have time for this kind of bullshit. The second thing I want to make clear, it's not a question of Europe versus Silicon Valley. If you want to build a company in Silicon Valley, there is a ton of pros to do that. There is a ton of cons, and there is many, many reasons down the road to help you to do that. But it's not our job. It's not like if you are interested by understanding the difference between Valley and Europe, there is a very simple answer to that. Silicon Valley is in California, Europe is in Europe. Dot. Like, you have to choose where you want to live first before thinking business. Because if you move only for business reason, you will end up very sad. So if you are in Europe, you have to understand and play the European game. If you are in the Valley, you have to understand the Valley and Valley game. If you go in New York, you have to understand New York and play the New York game. Like, you cannot spend all your life living with rules that you think others have. And the last thing I want to say about that is that you don't imagine how misrepresented Silicon Valley is around the world, because no one really knows the Valley until you go there. And most of the people that go there are not so interested about telling people outside how it really is. So everything we tell you about the Valley is true, but even more. And there is things that are bad and there are things that are good. But all of that is not a very interesting debate if you are not inside Silicon Valley. So, having said that, I think the good thing we need to think about and talk collectively about is what is our collective unfair of being in Europe. And I want to play a game with you. So I will give you a list of things we are building as unfair and we think they are unfair, and a list of things we are doing at the family and we believe at the family are a huge competitive advantage. I love the word unfair because, you know, competitive advantage is a smart word to say unfair, but unfair gives you the feeling of what we are talking about. We are talking about something that makes the life of entrepreneurs really better, really for the better. And here it's about thinking about what we have in Europe that is unique, that can help you build something that will win globally. Because we think that if startup thinks pan-European, they have the opportunity to build something that can take over the world and be really ambitious and do something great. So, first of all, it's not just a question of copying. I'm not saying copying is bad. I think a lot of entrepreneurs should copy their first business. It's a great way to learn. There's 1,000 of opportunity in copying what exists in Silicon Valley and make it happen in Europe. And there is a huge case for that. But even if it's a huge case, it's still a very small case. So, few things about copying. First, copying always as the limit of the environment you are copying in. You have to always think when something works somewhere, if it's independent or dependently of the place where it has been created. And there is so many things that you cannot copy and paste because you don't have the right infrastructure, you don't have the right financing, you don't have the right blah, 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 I don't know what. And most of people fail at copying because they understand the business from a caricature from the press. You know, they don't do their homework, they don't make it right, so they see an article on TechCrunch about a Uber for babysitters, and they say, oh, that looks a very good idea, let's do the same thing. And actually, the Uber for babysitters in the Valley is already bankrupt. So when you start to copy it, the company is already bankrupting there. So copying is not like, if it's hype in the press, it doesn't mean it's a success. The second thing you have to learn about copying is that it's a really hard job that needs a lot of very specific skills, and one of them is the capacity to adapt to local constraints. Because if you don't really understand the chain of value of the business you are copying, you cannot understand what will be easy to copy and what will not. For example, we say, Rocket Internet are very bad people because they copy the idea of great entrepreneurs in the Valley, and they are the bad guy because they make it happen in other countries. But the truth is that most of the business they are copying around the world are impossible business for the Valley company to launch, because Valley company are built on a very mature infrastructure when their company they are launching in other places are not. A good example of that is when they copy an e-commerce website in Indonesia, they have to build the payment infrastructure because there is no payment infrastructure in Indonesia. So copying the e-commerce website is not just about saying, oh, it works there, so let's make it work there. No, it's about building stacks, full stacks of things that make it possible. And that's why sometimes copying a business costs much more than launching a business in a mature, very prominent ecosystem where everything works already. So that's the aspect we don't see in copying and that really drive ambition. The third thing about copying is that whoever you are, if you succeed at some point by copying a business, you need at some point to start to innovate yourself. Because think about it, let's say you do a copycat of a very successful startup in the Valley and you win. And the company bankrupt and you are successful. Who do you copy now for the next iteration of your product? So you see, the copying thing is always a very temporary thing. It's not forever. Because if you win, you are in a situation where you have to be your own. So idea inspiration is great, but be careful before thinking that because we are in Europe, our goal is to copy. And why copying is not the only way? Because there is a lot of opportunity that don't exist anywhere else because they don't have the kind of infrastructure or unfair advantage Europe have. I will give you a very simple example as an early example. Let's take Deliveroo. Who use Deliveroo here? Okay. Deliveroo is a very good example of a company that needs a very high density cities. Do you think you can launch Deliveroo in Miami? So you order a food in a restaurant, the guy pick up a car, drive for 2.5 hours, get to your home, and get back, and it costs $10. Great business model. Deliveroo is a European company at heart because they have been launched in a place where they build a 10 million business on 10 meters square. You can build a 100 million business a year in London, just in Shoreditch. You just launch Shoreditch, and you say, I'm delivering every restaurant in that area for every worker, and you can build a 100 million business. You cannot do that in California. You can maybe do that a little bit in Manhattan, but still not very easy, a lot of street food competition, blah, blah, blah. So you see, it's a very good example of a company that is built on something very unique is the architecture of our cities, and they took that as an opportunity to build something incredible. So, one of the first advantage we have, and I think that's one of the most invisible one, is that we don't have borders. You know, we see United States as a single market. You know, that's a very common example we give people. We say, United States is so easy because everybody speaks English. And it's the same country, so it's a very unified market. And if one day you are lucky enough to travel in the United States, you will see that there is much more difference between someone living in Texas and someone living in California than there will be between an Estonian and a French guy. I can tell you that. Like, Europe is much more unified in terms of culture than United States is. But what is the difference? Okay, there is a language barrier. Does the language barrier is still something serious? No, because you have Google Translate. And I'm not kidding, you can launch a business thanks to Google Translate. Okay, you will talk like a 4 years old, but still, your customer will get it. You just need to make very simple sentence when you reply. And also, you have so much people that speak so much language for a very cheap price. You can set up multi-language team in any city of Europe for not such an expensive price in terms of customer support. And the only thing that makes it hard to scale is the customer support. But if you look in terms of cost on return on investment, and you look the kind of return of investment you get from launching so many countries that are so obviously not the top priority of any American company, you see that launching Europeanly can be a very strong thing. And also, there is something very strange in Europe. We don't have borders. We can travel for a very cheap price, and we can go in any city in any day in less than 4 hours. The radius travel in Europe is 4 hours. And everybody act like, my God, going to Berlin, I have to plan that 2 weeks in advance. Like, we can have a lunch tomorrow in Berlin. That's easy. If you have a good meeting in Berlin, you can go and come back for the price of taking TGV in France for 2 hours. So it actually costs more to travel in France than travel in Europe. Speak about that, SNCF. So, so think about that. Why people are so stuck in their local barriers? So, few problems. First problem is that people don't know others, and ecosystems are very separate. But they will still be separate until we all explore them. So, for example, I'm living in London 1 week every week from a year and a half, and nobody noticed it. And in London, everybody thinks I live in London full time. And here, everybody thinks I live here full time because it's so easy. You can just go and go back, and I can take both of what makes London great and what makes France great. By the way, on the last 100 million raised by our companies, 85 million come from UK. Does the company need to be in UK? No. You just need to take advantage of the fact that when you have a meeting with an investor, like I hate when startups say, yeah, I'm fundraising. If you want to tell us when you come to Paris next time and we can have a call or a talk. You're like, why? Take the fucking train to London and tell them you are there. And tell people in Berlin you are there. And tell people in Denmark you are there. If you are fundraising, expand your horizon. It's not a question of fundraising in UK or fundraising in Denmark. It's just about fundraising in Europe. It's a very easy target. And people don't do that because they have this mindset limit where they think that every country is separate. Sometimes I wonder why Europe is such a fail politically. And, you know, we have all big reason to think about Europe as a fail, our politician, blah, blah, blah. But still, everybody act like Europe is so separate, so distant, so complicated, so expensive, when it's so easy and so convenient if you just jump and do the effort to learn and build network over Europe. I'm not saying it will go fast. I'm just saying if you invest enough of your time in that, in few years, you will be really with a strong European network, and that will be an unfair advantage for all your life. And It's not about thinking who builds the next capital of startup. You know, every year's journalists are like, yeah, does France build more billion-dollar company than Berlin or London or blah, blah, blah? Okay, journalists love that. First, because they are journalists, and also because they have a lot of free time. So they can create competition where there is not competition. The truth is that right now we all sucks. Like, okay, London is a thriving startup community, but still, compared to the Valley, it's so small. Okay, France is great, we have the family. Thank you. We have the family. France is great, we have a BlaBlaCar, we have great unicorn, blah, blah. But still, we sucks. Like, we literally suck. I mean, like, what we build as a family in 3 years, every time I hear someone that tell me that's an achievement, I feel pissed off. Because it's just the beginning. It's just 3 years. If we did that in 3 years, our responsibility is to do 20 times more in the next 3 years and 100 times more in the next 10 years. That's how people should act. But we don't act like that because we are very provincial. You know, we think small. We are like, yeah, it's good enough for France, or it's good enough for London, or it's good enough for Berlin. And we can compare ourselves with ecosystem that no one care about. Of course, Berlin can compare to Paris. But does Berlin can compare to New York? Or does Berlin can compare to Hong Kong? Or does Berlin can compare to, I don't know, which thriving middle market or emerging market city? Of course not. It's just a bunch of hipsters doing few startups. So if you lower your level of competition, your numbers always look good. And you can create artificial competition. But where we can compete is we can say that London is a great place to get finance, France is a great place to get engineers, and Berlin is a great place to get product designer. And if you think like that, and if you think about the fact that you can chase talent on European level, capital on European level, and be a European company in multiple language, you will have the discipline to market around the world. And you can build decent big competitors of US companies, and you can go around the world. Take a company like Movinga. Movinga is a company that spends the 2 first years of their life thinking, I hope it's not confidential, thinking about launching in US. Sorry, Movinga guys. We are not friends anyway. They think about launching in US. And they started to really take off when they understand that launching in US was too far, too expensive, too complicated. And launching in Europe was a big game, and they are building a really decent big business in US that can take in Europe that can take over the world. And that comes down to the fact that because no one thinks European, you have so many businesses now that are so obsessed about the US, so obsessed about the American dream, so obsessed about everything that makes America great, but actually you don't really play the game because you don't really live full-time there. And they are so obsessed about that they will launch as a second country, United States, instead of any other country in Europe. And that doesn't make sense in 80% of the case. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes your biggest market on earth is United States. For example, Algolia. Algolia is a company that do a search engine SDK in the cloud that anyone can install in 5 minutes. If you are Algolia CEO and you launch Germany as a second country, you are lost. Like, you don't have any idea of what you are doing. Because there is no client in Germany, there is no client in France, there is no client in Italy, because it's so specific that the only place where you have 98% of your interesting clients in the world is Silicon Valley. So if you are Algolia, on day first, you say, okay, I'm using a huge unfair advantage, it's French engineers, because they are cheap, they are my friend, I can hire a lot and I'm quite exceptional, and I can use that as a strength to build a US BizDev team. And the US BizDev team will be able to target our most important market in the world. And if you think about Algolia, it's not a question of expanding internationally, it's a question of winning the valley. Because winning the valley in that business is winning the world. But now, let's say you are Trusk, Good example. They are listening. So trust, what they do, they move things around. You want to move a big couch, you buy something from IKEA, you want an instant delivery, you press a button, and someone came. And let's say you tell yourself, I will launch as a second country US. Why it's a very bad idea? Because US is an independent market by itself in the logistic business. Logistic in Europe, logistic in US is like the quantum physics and the classical physics. They share the word physics, but that's it. And everything you learn in Europe, you cannot apply in the US, and everything you will do in the US, you cannot apply in Europe. And by the way, there is thousands of companies in the US that are already competing in this market, like Lug, that fundraised 17 million. So what is your opportunity? Your opportunity is to stay in Europe and think European, and take so much position, so strong, so fast, that when a US company will come, you can go and compete in US. Because you will think that I will say you sell. No, you never sell, you kill. And you go to the US and you launch in the US when they will fight hard in Europe. Why US companies succeed against their European incumbent? Because each time a US competitor comes on the market, what people do is that first they are local and not pan-European, so they are weak. And they cannot fight back because what happened is that people have so much capital in the US that they expend that capital in Europe and spend a lot of money. But you, as a European company, instead of going on their national market and just piss them off, so they scale back and focus on their US market, you just let them kill you in Europe. That's what happened with Uber and every local competitors. Why every local competitors of Uber failed? Because they are local. They did not scale enough, fast enough in Europe. And you cannot be in a big fight. It's like going in a street fight and tell people, yeah, please today keep it easy because I didn't have breakfast. Like, people don't do that in street fight. People in street fight, they just fight. So you have to understand that. And it comes down to something is that if you think about every single country in Europe as a singularity, they all have pros and cons. Like France has thousands of pros and thousands of cons. If you look at UK, Germany, Italy, it will be the case for every country. And we get sucked up by this equilibrium instead of building an infrastructure around the pros. I will give you a very simple example. Corporate law and corporate structure. If you are a Silicon Valley startup, and you go to see a lawyer and you come and say, hi, I have an idea, I need to incorporate a company, what should I do? The US lawyer will tell you, it's very easy, use that standard document and incorporate in Delaware. Wherever you live in US, as a startup, we will always incorporate you in Delaware. By the way, in France, if you read French press, they will explain to you because it's for tax reason, because tax in Delaware are cheap. The truth is that in US, you pay your tax where you live. So even if you are incorporating in Delaware and you live in California, you will pay your tax in California. So it's fiscally, it's tax neutral. No, the reason is that Delaware is the best corporate law state. It's a state that have a passion for corporate law from 2nd century, that specialized judge in the subject, that can give an answer on any corporate litigation in less than 2 weeks. It's a huge specialization. And so what happened is that as a Californian entrepreneur, you will not end up living with California corporate law that are so weak, so strange, and that, by the way, are maybe worse than the French one, to tell you how horrible they are. But no one in California never used it, and they did not spend 25 years lobbying to change the Californian law. They say, no, there is something that already works, let's use it. So now let's think about our case. At the family, we incorporate 80% of our companies in UK. Why? Because in Europe, UK is a top leading corporate law country. It's not like that's how it is. They have a huge tradition of business and commerce. They have the British Empire and common law. By the way, it's a common law, so it's not civil law, so it's much more flexible. You can give equity much more easy. You can do things that will seem impossible in French law, and for 10% of the cost of doing it in France. Incorporating a company in UK costs £500 and takes 2 hours. 2 hours, not 2 weeks. Like in France, we say, wow, we are so good. In less than 2 weeks, people have their cabis. Yeah, okay, that's compared to 2 hours. And it matters. It matters that it's not a problem. It matters that it should be simple. Does it mean that you will pay your tax in UK? No. Like if you live in France, you pay your tax in France. If you live in your corporate tax, by the way, if you 100% of your clients are in France and you do everything in France, you do a subsidiary and you pay your tax here. I'm not telling you to take your tax and optimize, especially in public. But what I'm telling you is that you should take advantage of what Europe offers the best. Another example, I love Skype example from that. For example, Skype had their engineering team in Estonia. They had their legal headquarters in Luxembourg. They had their corporate headquarters in London. And they had their accountant in Switzerland. And I read an interview of the founder of Skype a long time ago, and the journalist was like, why your accounting team is in Switzerland? I said, because they are very cheap. Because Switzerland have so many banks, so many people specialize in accounting, that accounting is a commodity. And you have thousands of accountants on Meter Square, but by the way, are now in crisis because there is no bank anymore there. And so they have no other choice than offering their service for cheap price. And by the way, they can do an European accounting from anywhere. And they have people that know how to do French accounting, UK accounting, blah, blah, blah. So you see, that's a very good optimization. Maybe your design team should be in Italy. Maybe your sales team should be in Barcelona. Think about, look, you want to install a very lifestyle city with sales that are paid by commission in a place where it doesn't cost a lot to live in Europe. Where do you put it? Barcelona. Top cities. Cheap food, cheap rent, lot of sun, water. What do you want more for sales? Salespeople are very easy to make happy. And you can pay them in a bigger commission than the local market. It will be still cheaper than having your sales team in UK. By the way, in Barcelona, you have more than 160 nationalities. You have people speaking every language in the world, basically, living in Barcelona here for the lifestyle. So you see, thinking European totally changed the paradigm about how you build blocks around your company, how you scale your company, how do you live by the fact that it's not because you started in France that you need to leave every French problems. And it's so common in Europe that people are obsessed about saving their country. You know, we heard that so much at the family. So many people told us, oh, what you are doing for France is so beautiful. We never did anything for France. We did something for the 200 company coming at the family. And it happened, it's in Paris, and it happened we are open, and it happened that our doors are not closed to the local community. But if our goal was to save France, what arrogant it will be. Like, how do you think someone can come and start a project to save France? Like, only stupid people do that. Because it's an impossible goal. Saving 200 best companies in France and building an infrastructure for them, that's a realistic goal. It's ambitious, it's hard, it's tough, we struggle a lot, but at least we can realistically think that it can happen. On the opposite side, if your job is to think about how can I change my country, how can I save my country, it doesn't make sense. For example, we have so many times this feedback from people that invest in our company and they invest for the first time in UK. And they discover a process that is so simple. And they say, oh, that's so sad, you build a company in UK. It means that we are bad in France. I say, no, it doesn't mean that. It means that there is a country that is better, and we just should use what they do instead of spending years and years and years at changing our tradition. Because where is the problem behind that? The problem is that in startup community, people always think as they are the majority. So startups represent less than 2% of the GDP in France. Why do you want anyone take seriously our community, change corporate law, adapt it to specificity that are only a concern of us when we represent less than 2% of the GDP? Okay, we represent the future. Okay, we are hype. Okay, we are... All of that doesn't matter on the political scale. So if you want to change the corporate law in France, incorporate in UK. And when 100% of big success will have been incorporated in UK, politicians will have a problem. Because they will be like, oh my God, why? Why are you incorporating in UK? Because it's much better. And where do you pay your tax? In France, because that's the law. And you are doing that because it's easier. It's in English. International investors understand it. There is a huge concentration of money and capital. So if you want to localize an holding in Europe to get money for your company, put it in UK. So where you live is not where you operate. You have to be clear about that. You have to think very distributed. You have to think that everything is possible, and you have to think that you can take advantage of everything you have. And that will help you think Europe as a whole, and not think Europe as separate countries. Because I don't get why people replicate companies to launch in Europe. What will be the traditional story? The traditional story is that you have someone successful in France, so he wants to launch Germany. So he go in Germany, hire a managing director in Germany, he come back, and he say, now make it successful. And so you have the poor guy in Germany that is alone without money, that doesn't really know what he should do. And 3 months after he come back, say, you know, it did not work out, but because we don't have enough capital. And so 2 choices. You are in a rich company. Instead of hiring 1 dude, they will hire 5 dudes, but still will not know what to do. But at least there will be 5 and feel less alone. And they will come back a year after and they say, yeah, the market start to take off, but actually the problem is that we need a German product. And you will replicate every function of your company in Germany because you learn Germany, and it will take you years to succeed. It's a good way to expand internationally is that you have 2 cases. One case, you need local operation, and local operation should never be launched by local people. For example, that's one of the genius moves of Uber, is that Uber have a launching team that launch cities around the world, cities after cities. Because they say it's much easier to hire someone to manage than someone to launch. So the guy that launched Paris will be the same guy that launched London, that will be the same guy that launched Munich, that will be the same guy that launched Tokyo. And they become specialized at launching. And if you think your company functionally and not country by country, you can centralize things for the whole Europe. Because you can enter in a decentralized, centralizing mode. Decentralizing because you will take the best of every country, and centralizing because maybe your sales team and your customer support for every country in Europe will be in Barcelona. Maybe your engineering team for all over Europe will be in Romania. Maybe your legal counsel for every country in Europe will be in London. And if you think like that, you will become much more efficient and you will succeed much faster because you will create a culture. Because what people learn about Germany maybe will be used in Denmark, that will maybe be used in some other place. And when countries are successful, you can launch local operation. But local operation are always a second step. And at least when you launch local operation, you launch it with people that come from the headquarters and go there. Not the other way around. Because if you hire people locally that need to learn everything you learned during 5 years to succeed, they will never do that for a cheap salary. You know, it's not worth it. It's too complicated. And so, in your mind, you can separate market and team. There is too much confusion about the fact that your team needs to be where your market is. That's not true. Algolia, again, they build an engineering team in France that is 5 times bigger than their sales team in the US. And it creates a lot of pain. I'm not, understanding me well, I'm not saying this model is perfect. It's not perfect to have your the perfect model will be to have everyone in one office and everybody communicating with everyone, and everyone in love for everyone. Like that will be the perfect kibbutz. But because best startups are perfect kibbutz. But it's not how it works. Like life is not perfect. So you have to adapt around your constraint. You have to optimize. You have to find tricks. You have to find hacks. And having your engineering team in France and your sales team in the US mean you will need to do an over-investment around communication. For example, one of the very strange things Algolia did from day first is that even if they are in Paris, even if the first 5 employees are French, they always talk in English at the office. And I don't know how they do that because I cannot, but that's a very good trick because they gave the feeling to everyone that they can welcome anyone from anywhere. And he helped them overcome the problem of having a team separate with 9 hours separation. And that's something that is important. One of the ways to expand in Europe is that you need to trust the internet, you need to trust the data. I don't know why people launch countries because they decide to launch countries. I see that so many times. You know, entrepreneurs, they love to play to, like they have the feeling when they expand internationally that it's a board game and they put pin on country, you know, and they feel like, yeah, I'm becoming the emperor of the world. You should not launch somewhere if you don't know that you sell first. You know, one of the best ways to launch internationally is to launch everywhere in every language and just see where it works the best. And when you have the confidence that somewhere it works better than in any other place, you launch it. There is no other way. Like, it's international expansion is not less data-driven than anything else in your business. It's as data-driven as everything in your business. So let the data get the way. Let's use the data to take decision. Let trust the internet to help you discover where your early user buy markets are. And I want to talk about something. It's something that I think we really live at the family, and it's really a very precious concept for us. I should write a blog post about that. It's what I call the internet nation. So our theory is that a new country is born, and that country is invisible, and that it exists, and most of you are members of this country, even if you don't have a passport of this country. This country is called the Internet Nation. So what are the citizens of the Internet Nation? They speak English. They can use anything from anywhere just because it's on the internet. There is no boundaries, and they share a global culture that make them understand things that only people living in the Internet Nation understand, specifically cats and memes. And so I know who is member now. So Internet Nation go through the age, go through the nationality, and you can think it as a kind of a parasite nation. So you have members of this nation in every countries, and the percentage is bigger or smaller depending on the countries. Maybe 80% of Silicon Valley live in Internet Nation, or maybe less, I don't know. Maybe 50% of people in this room feel that they live in Internet Nation, but Internet Nation is a reality. And sometimes the first country to launch your product is the Internet Nation. Sometimes your product should be launched in English, not specific to any market, but specific to this target of users that we call the Internet Nation. And it's very important to understand that Internet Nation exists. The first time I think about Internet Nation, I'm ashamed, but I was at the movie theater watching The Social Network. And I don't know if you remember at the end of The Social Network, he's with the lawyer, and the lawyer tells him that he will pay $1 billion in fine, and anyway, he's billionaire. So that will be like a ticket parking for him. And he's on his computer, and she says, "What are you doing?" And I say, "I'm looking to the traffic in how Facebook is growing in Romania." And the lawyer says they don't have roads in Romania, but they have the Facebook. So first, they have very good roads in Romania. So that's very Hollywood to think that, you know, Americans think that civilization is only in America. Like French think that social security is only in France. and everybody else in other countries die in the street like ill. And so sometimes there is some local bias like that. But Romania is a great country. They have a better internet than in Silicon Valley, and they have great things. So what are you talking about? Ignorant. Yeah, I told this kind of thing in my mind, and I was like, but interesting, is really people in Romania now on Facebook, or are they in the internet nation? And the truth is that the first user of Facebook have been people living in internet nation. Why? Because the first user of Facebook have been people that have friends all over the world. Because they studied abroad, they came back, and blah, blah. And that created a link and a map of people, you know, like spy around the world, that will be the first users everywhere. And these users feel much more connected to the internet than connecting to their own nation. And this is why I'm talking about internet nation, is because I think it's a big cultural thing. I think there is more and more people, even if it's a small minority, that feel much more comfortable online and on the internet as general than in any country on earth, and are ready to move in any country. And I think that's something where a startup can build big things around that idea, the internet nation idea. So some of the things that we take as weakness in Europe, and we are ashamed on the global capitalistic market, are actually something that make us a very competitive landscape for startup. And one very small example of that is vacation policy. You know, I don't never remember that, but I think in California, the legal vacancy is 7 days a year or 14 days a year. And in France, it's 5 weeks a year. Yeah, something like that. And, you know, a lot of French people are ashamed of that, and they're like, oh my God, we are lazy, blah, blah, blah. So first thing, statistically, we are much more productive than any Californian. So it doesn't mean a lot, but it means something. We are very productive people. And Europe is a very productive place in the world. And one of the reasons of that is that if you look the average vacation policy in the Valley is 6 weeks a year. If you want to hire someone very high level in Silicon Valley, you don't offer him 2 weeks a year. You offer him 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks a year, because that's a way you can compete against everyone. Because there is a point where you cannot increase salary forever. You know, you can pay early employee 200,000 a year, but there is a point where you cannot. So you compete around benefits, you compete around this kind of thing. So if Silicon Valley can survive with this kind of policy, there is even company in Silicon Valley that created unlimited holidays policy. Yeah, a lot of people don't take it, and it creates other barriers, but still. The idea is that they compete around that. So sometimes I feel that everything we told you, you know, I think the problem we have in Europe is that we have all these old-fashioned entrepreneurs where all their business is based on the idea that their employees are kind of slave, and they need to produce more value so they can make more money. All of that is false in startup. In startups, employees create as much value as a CEO, and they are kind of a partner for the management team. And that's why, you know, in most startups, the ambience between employee and the boss is so good. And every startups that act like they are a 19th century, you know, capitalist that manage a factory end up having no employee at all. And no one wants to work for this kind of jerks. So I have not, like, I know a lot of investors always say, oh yeah, but your social regulation, social policy are so strong that it's not a competitive advantage. I can always explain factually to them that actually it's false, and that the Valley is actually higher in terms of benefits than Europe. And Europe is cheaper because that benefits are paid collectively and not only by the company. So that is a huge unfair. Another unfair is that, you know, you always have a bright side to something that don't work well. A good example of that is B2B sales. You know, if you are a product that is launching a B2B offer, I advise you to have American clients. They are much easier to get paid by. It works much better. But there is a downside. The downside is that because they are easy to get in, they are so easy to get out. It's a very logical thing. If they are ready to use new things, they are ready to drop old things. In Europe, it's really hard to get a client, because they struggle to change. They are not really sure they want to change, blah, blah, blah. But when you get it, you can do whatever you want. You are very comfortable for a lot of years. So you see, I'm not sure it's a huge upside. I don't know if it's better to have people earlier, easy, and get dropped later, or the other way around. It's not clear, it's not obvious. But you always have an opportunity if you look the thing in the right side. One of the things we have in Europe is that we have this very counterintuitive proposition around the home run and around ambition. A lot of people in the US are very ambitious, and people in Europe say, yeah, we are smaller, we don't have as big companies, so we should be less ambitious in what we want to build. Actually, it's because we are smaller, it's because it's more complicated that you need to be more ambitious. Because you can see that as a negative weight that takes you down and you need to overcome it to jump. And more the weight is strong, more you need to jump high if you want to survive and get around the water. I was imagining water and yeah, forget it. So you see the tiger is in the water, like, why are you surprised? So it's very counterintuitive. We like to think that small things are fine, but small things are not fine in Europe. And so if I can give you an advice as an entrepreneur, between doing a shitty project yourself or joining a very ambitious project as an employee, and you want to build a career as an entrepreneur, join a very ambitious company as an employee. Because it will help you to go much bigger and much faster in your career than staying alone and doing something small because you feel European and doing small things are fine. Because what happened is that American competitors always come down and they always put much more money than anyone else locally. And if you did not build something big enough, you always end up crash. And there is thousands of Robin Hood opportunity in Europe because we are so used to uncompetitive market. We are so used to have monopoly and regulation and things that drive customer crazy. And customers in Europe are always big user of disruption. Like biggest market of Airbnbs are in Europe. Biggest market of Uber before India and China have been in Europe. Europe is a very big opportunity because people are thriving for this kind of solution. People are really because if you look Capitaine Train, for example, Capitaine Train is such an opportunity because Voyage SNCF is not a business company. That's easy as that. 12 engineers can go against an 800 engineers company just because nothing works. And because there is politics, because there is history, because there is SNCF. And all of that is a huge opportunity. Look at our banks. Look at our insurance company. Look at our food company. Look at around everything that is in monopoly and create very high level of customer unsatisfaction. And this is why pessimism is such an opportunity. Everybody around you, everybody outside is depressed. And I hate when an entrepreneur say, oh, I don't feel well in Europe because everybody is depressed. And very often I take that as a sign that you are not with a real entrepreneur. Real entrepreneurs create their own bubble, they live in the bubble, and they don't care that anyone is depressed. And they take that as an opportunity for less competition. They take that as an opportunity to offer something that is really a glass in a desert. Glass of water in desert, that's what European entrepreneurs can build. Because people are not, like, look, you live in the valley. Every day you have a fucking guy that pitch you something. Every day. Like, you are going in the street, from Mission Street upstairs to downstairs, and you have 10 entrepreneurs that try to grab you. Yeah, that's how it is. And they are in the street, like that, yeah. and the truth is that there is so many innovation by Meta Square that being different is hard. Here, you do trust. And everybody is surprised, like, wow, it's possible. I can call you and you come. Yes. And you smile. Yes. My God, I love you. I didn't know that was possible. And, there are good companies, but it was easy. It was easy because the market is so down. Bring a little bit of care in Europe and everybody loves you. Bring a little bit of originality, everybody will be around you. And it will not be like that forever. I hope we will be like the Valley in 10 years and that the family build so much startup in Europe that people will be so pissed off about startups. If one day people are, oh, again, like, no more efficiency, please. I want things broken like before. That will be a huge success. And that comes down to an other advantage that is very invisible, but that European companies don't use enough to leverage globally, is that doing a company in Europe right now is like running in the sand. It hurts, it's really difficult, but it builds muscle. And if you start to run out of the sand, you will be light and you will run and fast, like Forrest Gump. Like Forrest Gump, you will run like that guy because that guy had a lot of trouble in his childhood and he built muscle thanks to that. And when, he's like free of his constraint, he run really, really fast. That's exactly the story of European company. You have to see that as an opportunity to build muscle. Right now everybody speaks about the fact that there is a bubble in the valley or there is not a bubble in the valley or blah, blah, blah. And you have this very smart VC that write article like, yeah, we realized, because they speak like that, we realized that you need to have a profitable company. Ready? Yeah. Losing money on every order doesn't go for long. Wow, guys. Yeah. Great. So can we come back to real things? Of course, you need profitable company. Of course, you need capital efficiency. Of course, offering a 10,000 bike as a signing bonus for every engineer joining you is not sustainable. Like, that's a true quote. You can go on Google and check. 10,000 signing bonus are dead in the valley. Like, an investor is saying that. And you're like, why did you offer a bike at 10,000 in first place? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, what's your problem? And your problem is that you lived for too long time in a place where there was way too much capital. And we never had that opportunity. So by the way, it's not because we did not leave a bubble that now we will crash. European is so funny because you have all these investors that spent the last 10 years explaining us that it was a bubble, and so that's why they don't invest, and valuations are too high, and it's crazy, and blah, blah, blah. And now that valuation go down, they are like, yeah, I cannot invest, valuations are going down. What are you doing, actually? Like, there's nothing that makes you happy. You should fight around that. When you meet an investor, when you pitch an investor, when you try to fundraise money, you have to explain this simple fact. In Europe, we never had an other opportunity than being capital efficient. In Europe, we never had an other opportunity than being smart around our employees. In Europe, we never had an other opportunity to build things with few things and try to scale it. And that's, as an operative mode, learn you a lot of things. And that's why Europe built a lot of universal company in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And we got broke with the internet because we lost the internet mode and we was like, internet is different, we don't really understand it. The bubble traumatized so many people in Europe that they said internet is dead. But it's not because we lost that as a revolution that now we cannot build something as jet lagger, It's not because we are jet lag that we cannot go to the party. We can still have fun in the party. We just need to go to the after. So, another argument that European companies don't use enough is the lifestyle argument. Who here went to Palo Alto once in their life? Raise your hand. Okay. So, raise your hand very high because I want that you are a witness of what I will say now. Palo Alto is the most ugly city on earth. Like, it looked like, a suburban city of nowhere land. The restaurant that will be open so late will be 9 p.m. And after 9 p.m., you will not have any food left in the city. So of course, people there, they want delivery service. Of course, they want cinema at home. Of course, they don't believe retail will survive because they don't have infrastructure. I can tell you a story. I was at a dinner with Reed Hastings, you know, the CEO of Netflix. And I was with Henri Seydoux, and you don't imagine how much I love that French entrepreneur. Henri Seydoux is the founder of Parrot and Le Boutin. Because everybody knows him for Parrot, but few people knows him for Le Boutin. And I find that first extraordinary to create two such different company, a luxury, legendary shoes company, and an electronic consumer that started by doing audio in cars. You know, it's so funny. And that guy is one of the best entrepreneurs in France, from far, really. He has a very deep mind, it's funny. And the first sentence he told Reed Hastings was, you know, Reed, I don't like the Valley because you don't have any taste. Like, you are billionaires and you live in a house where even, I don't know, like an average paid employee in France will not want as a house. And you know, here in Europe, we have mysteries, we have diamonds, we have art, we have movies, we have actresses, we have fashion models, and you have geeks and people. And the guy was like, yeah, seeing like that is kind of sad. But it's true. You are on a global competitive market for talent. You can sell all of that. You know, we even think about launching a meetup here. My girlfriend lives in Paris to attract engineers from the Valley. I'm sure it will work because lifestyle is something that people want. They don't define their life only by their work. They define their life also by their entertainment, by their pleasure, by the fact that you can walk in any street in Europe, it will look like a museum. That's a huge competitive advantage. But we don't use it because we don't market it well. And we don't use it because we don't make it easy to people. For example, Algolia, again, they are so good. They hire very globally, but they make it easy. Because where is the problem? The problem is that our infrastructures are not welcoming. You know, when you come from abroad, I don't know if there is people that come from abroad here, but it's horrible to come in France. You go to Préfecture, you know, you want to rent an apartment. I lived in France for 10 years. I left 3 years in the Valley. I didn't have a pay split for 10 years. I spent the first 9 months of my coming back in France in an hotel room. 9 months. Because no one wanted to rent me an apartment. Welcome back in France. You know, and all of that, as a company, you can solve that. For example, Algolia act as a guarantor for every employee that tried to get an apartment. They raise 15 million, so no one is like, yeah, sure, you can be a guarantor. and you have a lot of opportunity like that. You can hire a lawyer and send him to the prefecture instead of your employee spending months to try to understand someone at the prefecture. You can help for the visa, you can help for the lodging, you can help. And if you help with all of that, Paris, London, Rome, Barcelona, they become very attractive place for ambitious people. Because you can give lifestyle plus ambition in one single package. But lifestyle argument is not enough. You need to make them understand that they are not coming only for the lifestyle. By the way, pay attention to that, because sometimes you attract the worst, because they come only for the lifestyle. But the lifestyle as a signing bonus for very ambitious people, not enough companies use it as a leverage. So, remember that. If you have something to take out of this seminar, is start where you want to live, but it's not where your business needs to be. You have to separate your life and your business. You have to optimize over your business. You have to optimize over your life. And you can use your life as an unfair advantage over your business. But it's not because you live in France that you incorporate in France. It's not because you are born in Italy that you build your business in Italy. It's just you have to use it as a base, as a strength, where you have hiring capabilities, where you have things you can use on the long term. Build your own infrastructure. Use what is around you to build something that no one else can build. Another example from Algolia, I don't know why today it's the only one that popped my mind today, but sorry. Algolia, for example, built an incredible engineering team because they have a huge unfair in hiring engineers in France. They spent 15 years as top executive in a software company in France. If they try to hire an engineer in the valley, they will be just random next guy. But if they try to hire in France, they will be the guy. Because everybody knows them in the industry, they have a very good reputation. So you see, engineering, like, yeah, I know some people love to say we have the best engineer on earth. That's false, because there is nowhere such a thing as the best engineer on earth. But still, because our engineers in France are good, as they are good in India, as they are good in US, you should be hiring them where you have an unfair to get the best. Because even if the engineers are good in the US, they will have less good engineers and very average engineer because they will not have the unfair advantage of knowing the market, having an established network, and blah, blah, blah. The other thing is that if you think that we are going to a jobless future, think about that. I think it will be better to live in France than in anywhere else. And it's my theory, maybe Europe is a bit in advance. You know, we build all this social infrastructure for a future that did not exist yet, but actually we are genius and no one noticed that. So that's a thing. Every city in Europe has their fan base, and every city has their strength, and every city has their advantage you can work around. Think about that. Expand your horizon. Think strategically. And if you don't know the city and the strength, just travel a little bit. It will be good for your life, it will be good for your mood, and you will learn something and not spend so much time. And at the end, it's because Europe is complicated. It's because Europe is so fucked up that Europe is such a great place to build business. But you have to do it the European way. If you try to be an American in Europe, you will end up being no one. If you understand what's so specific in Europe and how to build something great, you can build extraordinary companies, and we have a lot of them at the family. Thank you.
Talked about that you make your startups to register in UK.
Incorporate in UK, yeah.
Incorporate in UK.
Not all of them, but most of them, yeah.
Because I just don't know it. Is it not obligatory to live in UK and incorporate there?
No. No, so it's not a corporate law thing. Take a lawyer, there's a ton of tax implication around that. It's not easy, but very basic concept. You can incorporate wherever you want, and you don't need to live where you incorporate. But you have two things. You have the corporate law and you have the tax. And you have the social structure. So the easy concept. Corporate law, you can incorporate wherever you want, and you can optimize around that. At the family, we have a policy to always incorporate in your biggest market. So if in the next 10 years, your biggest market will be UK, not meaning that it will be your first market, but where in the first 10 years, we will advise you UK. If in the next 10 years, biggest market will be US, we will incorporate in Delaware. And if in the next years, the biggest market will be France, we will incorporate you in France. So that's why, for example, WeSlash is incorporated in UK. That's why Algolia is incorporated in Delaware. And that's why Agricool is incorporated in France. Because Agricool story will be a lot of R&D for, they will need crédit impôt recherche, blah, blah, where WeSlash, if they take crédit impôt recherche, is because they are liars. So better to put them in a structure where they cannot take it. So you see, it's really a question of where you market. So incorporation is very easy. After you have the tax problem. So the tax problem is that anyway, in first place, you don't pay tax. And when you pay tax, you have a lot of consideration about what we call pricing transfer policy. You need to take a very specialized lawyer around that. It's not easy. It's a pain. And you need multiple tax control to come up to a negotiation with the tax authority. So I know it can seem strange for people, but you have to understand that people negotiate the tax. It's not like, don't think tax is a law that it's very clear. It's that you have a negotiation around your tax, and more your company is successful, more you have leverage in this negotiation. That's why we talk about Google and blah, 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 that don't pay the tax, blah, blah. Don't think Google is doing anything illegal. It's just that Google has a lot of lawyers that can spend a lot of hours negotiating with tax authority, and tax authority feel a little bit lost, so they fight back and they come back, and so it's complicated. And you have a last aspect, is a social aspect. It's your personal life as a person, as an entrepreneur. Where do you pay your tax on the money you get? And that is very easy. You pay your tax where you live. You live in France, you pay your social security and your personal tax in France. You live in UK, you pay in UK. You live in Belgium, you pay in Belgium. So that's the free aspect. And all of them can be independent. You can incorporate in UK, pay your corporate tax in Belgium because you have operation in Belgium, and pay your social tax in France because it's someone living in France doing it. You see, the three can be in the same place, but the three can be totally separate.
Do you think there's also an advantage from a geographical point of view when Europe is much closer to, the Russian border or the Asian border or Africa on the other side, or is it that doesn't really matter?
I'm not sure he has a great. Okay, it's true, but I don't know if the effect is so big, because I always surprised when people talk about geographic advantage as something real in the world where anyway it doesn't make so much difference to travel 12 hours or 8 hours. It's not a big deal. Anyway, when you're in first class, you sleep. So that's what people say when they travel a lot. So I don't know. One of the things I learned is that Americans are really, really bad at international expansion. I know it sounds counterintuitive because they are the only country that succeed at international expansion, but they succeed because they are ready to spend whatever it costs. And they spend so much in so dumb thing. So for example, if anyone can launch a country for 5 million, they will be ready to spend 50 million to get it. And it will be stupid because they can have saved 45 million, but they don't care because they prefer to spend time to raise money instead of spending time to understand the country. That's arbitrage we do. One of the things is that the problem is that Europeans are not better at internationalization. So, you can say, you can see it as an advantage, but you will not be better and you will not have the capital. So you will not that. But if you understand that they are not good as you think, you can work out at being good. Because being good at international expansion is being good at feeling local. Something anyone can learn. It's just you need to live there, you need to spend time, you need to be very open-minded, you need to don't be surprised by anything you see. You have two kinds of travelers. You have the travelers that spend their time understanding what they see abroad, and you have all the travelers that spend the vast majority of their time to try to understand why it's different and why it doesn't work like it works where they are. And you can see that traveling with people in 10 minutes. So good entrepreneurs are in the first case. They take everything as taken and they just, apply and execute. So if you don't do it that way, international expansion is horrible. And I'm not talking about the kind that try to change a country in their way. It doesn't make sense. I give a chocolate to the last question. Oh, yeah, it works.
Should I understand that if you have some ambitious, let's say, pan-European or worldwide project, you must incorporate in England rather than in France?
No. So, again, the question will be, where is your biggest market? You can have something, look, Agricool. I don't know if you know Agricool. They do strawberries in containers. Their biggest market is France, from far. Even if they launch in every country around the world, France will be the place where they will have their R&D. France will be where they will have a love relation with the customer. France is where we take food so seriously that making a food company worldwide can start from France. So it's not question of worldwide ambition. It's question of where is your first big changing step. If you look, we slash do temporary work. We slash biggest market in Europe is UK. So even if they launch in France first, they need to incorporate in UK because that's where will be the end game. That's where they will set up their headquarters. That's where they can hire people that understand what they do. That's where they build something extraordinary. So it depends much more from where is your biggest natural market in intensity of market than your ambition. Because after, from anywhere, you can scale everywhere. So it's not an unfair advantage.
If the business is a purely internet business,
yeah.
So the only question.
So if you are an internet nation, the best place to incorporate, if you are really an internet nation and you have people distributed everywhere, London will be the best place.
Okay.
Like,
and when it comes to raising funds,
yeah, London is much better than anywhere in Europe.
Okay, I think that's answered my question.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, up. A promise is a promise. So, last question. I don't have chocolate anymore, but.
You said before that if we're copying a US American startup, we need to learn about its value chain.
Yeah.
But if you go on the web, even on Quora or I can use
Oh my God.
It's not always easy to find good information.
That's
about
the worst way to get information.
So, do you have any advice about that to get information?
Do the homework. Call them. Go to a job interview. The best way to get information about a company you want to copy is to. You have a rabbit. The best way to copy a company is to go to a job interview and do the process and learn everything and ask thousands of questions. Just apply for a job, and they will answer every question you have because they want to hire you. That's the best way. If you are not good enough to get a job interview, tell them you are a journalist and you write an article. That's the second best way to have information. But do your fucking homework. Like, I don't know why people, internet just represents the storytelling of the company. Like, think about yourself. You have a journalist. Do you tell him about your struggle, or things going bad, or blah, blah, blah? No, you just tell him how good you are, how it's great, blah, blah. So people, after they copy, it's so funny. I lived that situation of being in the board of a company in the US and having discussion in the board of directors about why a specific feature is not working and why it's horrible and what is the biggest mistake they ever did. And coming back to Europe for holidays and noticing that the European copycat took 1 year to copy the feature where there it was like, oh my God, why we did that? And yeah, so it's hard to copy.
I've lived in the U.S. and Europe, and I've noticed, from my perspective, maybe everyone else in the room can tell me what their feeling is. I'd like to make it interactive. I think people in Europe are much more willing to use technology and something new than people in the U.S. They're more afraid. It seems like
in US they are more.
No, here
In Europe, that's false.
Well, from my experience.
Yeah, I know, but your experience is wrong.
Right.
Are you
It's
American?
my experience.
No, but I know, but I will tell you why your experience is wrong.
Please do.
Are you American?
I'm American and Swiss.
Okay, so that's a very common cultural bias when an American look at the European market. Because what he look at is the feedback of the people. People in Europe are much less willing to give good feedback about anything than an American one. But if you look about adoption rate of any technology, Europe is always going faster than in US. Because in US, you go and see someone and you show him your technology and he will tell you, this is awesome. Like, my God, that's marvelous. Oh my fucking crazy God. Like, and after they will switch to the other technology and say the same thing, and they will not use it. And you will never get any feedback. In Europe, 99% of people will tell you, yeah, or why it's innovative. And the problem is that entrepreneurs take that as a feedback that, oh, they are not interested. But the truth is that because they say that, you can build something faster and you can make it. And if they adopt, it will go much faster than in the US. And that's why Airbnb reached 1 million users faster in France than in California. That's why Uber reached a growth of cars here in France faster than in San Francisco in growth rate, not in absolute number, because you're still growing. And it's true for a lot of technologies. Like the first buyers of Japanese technology in the world is Europe. But again, it's not easy. So there is this confusion between feedback and adoption. Feedback is much more horrible in Europe. Adoption is much faster, but only fewer companies get the illusion of adopting. And by the way, that's why so many American companies get user things like that. That's the kind of thing doesn't happen often in Europe, because in first place, you will not do it like that if people are not the feeling that we will do it for 10 years. Thank you.
Que l'enfant